Hi there, everybody. My name is Sipho Ngwenya, and welcome to another episode of MultiTalks. This is a platform where we drive insightful conversations on some of the great initiatives being led by the MultiChoice Group. Now, on previous episodes, we've covered the MultiChoice Disky Challenge, the MultiChoice Talent Factory, and the impact of Shaka Ilembe on the broader creative industry. Now, on today's episode, we'll be chatting to Uchola Makhamate, who is a legal expert on intellectual property and copyright law, and she'll be chatting to us about some of the great work that's been done by Partners Against Piracy. Chola, welcome to MultiTalks. You are our ninth guest, but also our second guest who has transitioned from the hardcore legal life, you're an attorney of the High Court, to now being someone in the creative space, but still practicing law.
Yeah.
So, before we get into, the meat of today's conversation, which is all about, copyright law, etc., just, for the people at home who don't know who you are, a little background about who you are, etc., and then we'll get into it.
Okay, so my name is Chola Makhamate. A long, interesting history. I was born in Zambia. I have lived in a number of countries, including Scotland and Botswana.
Nice.
And then eventually settled here just before the end of apartheid. So I came to South Africa at a very interesting time. I was just about to start high school. So I moved from a very dynamic environment that I was predominantly Black in nature to a country where there was so much change happening. And I had to make several adjustments just from a social, cultural, mental point of view. I had to do things like learn how to speak Afrikaans in order to get into university.
Hectic.
So that was very interesting for me. So I've just had a very interesting upbringing and worldview. I went to Wits University.
Mm-hmm. Wits alumni.
Yes. Shout out to Wits. And I have become law and also an LLM in law. So that's a master's in law.
Okay.
I started off, as you said, in hectic, as you say, law. I practiced labor law for one of the big firms. And I then got pregnant with my first child. And I decided that wasn't for me. And I stayed at home for a year. And then stumbled into the culture and creative industries because a friend of mine worked at the Department of Arts and Culture and they were doing something in the music business and they needed a lawyer. And I've been here ever since.
Sure. That's a very rich and full, background. But, and I'm thinking to myself, you probably like the third guest that we've had who has touched on, life before apartheid and growing up in those times, etc. Did that have any kind of like influence in terms of, you going in the path that you've chosen?
I think because we traveled so much, the saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss. So I'm not used to being in one place for a long period of time. Yeah, and I'm used to wearing many hats, and you have to be in different environments and you learn to pivot, read the room, read environments, always trying to find a solution. And always trying to make it work, because whilst you're in that environment at that time, you have to take into account everything that's happening, make it work, make friends, build relationships, that kind of thing. So that really shaped who I eventually, or who I am today, and the path that I've taken.
And so now you've fully immersed yourself in this creative space, and you work at an organization that I know quite well, Samro. I'm just trying to think to myself, don't you miss that life of, having to represent, people from, with labor law, that side of things. Did you ever see yourself in this, mad industry of us?
I never did, actually. Growing up, I watched a lot of legal drama. So I always saw myself in that space, going to court, etc., etc. But when you enter that world, you soon realize that TV is TV. It's all glamorous. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background before you actually get to that point where you are sitting or standing in front of a judge. And even with the legal system as it is, it's usually counsel that appear in front of a judge, not necessarily attorneys. So, I never saw myself in the culture and creative industries, and in watching those dramas, I only got an appreciation of what practicing law was when I was practicing law. And where I am now, it's not that different, because where I work, I head up the legal department, and we do still go to court. So we represent composers and authors, and we license music for users, right? So broadcasters, restaurants, retailers, etc., etc. In order to use our members' music, you must take up a SAMRO license, and then we give you indemnity to use the license. Okay, basically saying we allow you to use our members' music, and then we won't come after you. But if you use our members' music and you don't get a license, then we can sue you. Or if you take up a license with us and then you don't pay the license fee, then we can sue you. So still doing the same thing, but in a different context.
All right. Since you've gone into it, let's get into this conversation around, IP, copyrights, piracy.
Yeah.
There's many misconceptions, right? And I want us to dispel those right up front. About IP and copyright control, from a creator's point of view. What are those misconceptions around, IP?
I think before we even get into IP, I like the way you introduced me. Like, I made the transition from serious law into where I am now. I think there is a big misconception about the culture and creative industries and people who work in the culture and creative industries. Yes, it's a cultural and creative space, but you're still doing work.
Correct.
You still get up, do what you need to do. You need to get paid. And I think part of the problem is that people in this industry are not viewed that way. It's sort of like, and I think maybe
it's a hobby.
It's a hobby.
Yeah.
You're just a dancer, you're just a singer, you're just an actor.
Correct.
It's a profession. People go to school for it. They work hard at it. It's a craft that they perfect. There's work that goes into it, and people need to be remunerated.
And I'm glad you say that, because it's actually one of the oldest careers, if you think about it, right?
Correct.
Entertainment.
Correct.
If you go back to so much Greek mythology, there's evidence of entertainment.
Correct.
Right? And people using that as a career path.
Yeah, and it's an important career path, and you must get paid. And I think that's where the problem comes, is that people don't take it seriously. And they don't understand that in as much as you're going to an office and you're a lawyer, an accountant, or even somebody working behind a cashier, it's their job. You need to get paid because you've got obligations. You've got mouths to feed. You've got bond or rent to pay. You've got all of
So then
these
why
things.
don't people take it serious then?
Because of the positioning, I think. It's always been positioned, and I don't know when it happened, a hobby. Something that you don't take seriously as being a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever else the case may be. I just think it's how society has been structured. It's just something you do for fun. It's entertainment. But it's not that. There's more to it than that. But I think the other problem as well is that people don't understand exactly how the money is made.
The commercial part of it.
Yes, the business, the commercial. And there's a big business and commercial machine behind the culture and creative industries. I think partly because they are gatekeepers around knowledge and how things work. Because if people don't understand how things work, then they can't engage in the system. And it's also not
that's so key. Yeah.
And it's not as well. It's documented, but it's documented in such a way that very few people understand what is being said. So when you talk about copyright, most people, what are you talking about? I don't want to hear.
But then that explains the amount of exploitation that happens on artists.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I roll the years back, my own life, for instance, I just think of when I was a musician and, you signed to an independent record label and the owner of the business, clearly doesn't want you to be successful. They want you to be successful to obviously benefit them, but they don't want you to know too much about certain things because then that means it's going to hurt their pocket in terms of their returns, right?
Correct. It'll hurt their pocket, but also when you're empowered, right, you make different choices. When you're not, you sit in conversations you shouldn't sit in. You laugh at certain things you shouldn't laugh at. You deal with people you shouldn't deal with. But if you're empowered, you know how to make the moves you need to make, and you know how to put the right team around you. Then you gain your own independence and you understand how your money flows. And if you're not equipped to handle your money, you get the right people to handle your money for you. And I think that's what a lot of people don't have.
Okay. So now let's get into it now, right? What is IP? What is intellectual property?
So intellectual property is property of the mind, right? And you need to protect that property of the mind. So what you produce of your mind, and then obviously manifests itself in physical form. And there are different kinds of intellectual property. So think of it as IP as a house. So IP is a roof of the house, and then there are different columns in the house. So you've got things like designs, trademark, and then you have copyright, which is one form of intellectual property. Trademarks, designs are more traditional, quote unquote, very documented. It's easy to understand how to register things. It's a step-by-step process, etc., etc. And it's easy for people to engage in that. Copyright is very nebulous to a lot of people. There is, in most jurisdictions, no registration process. There's no step-by-step guide to copyright. There's a Copyright Act, which is very old, which gives you details of what copyright is, in what instance a work is protected, where if infringements happen, this you take that step, etc., etc. But the nitty-gritty, like how it works in the background, that is not purely, it's not articulated properly in the Act. And those who operate in the space, like I said, it's not articulated fully by them as to how copyright works.
So now can I make a practical example, right, of to just make it easier to digest for people watching?
Yeah.
18-year-old Sipho just graduated from matric, decides, you know what, I'm not going to go to university. In fact, I want to be a creative. So I'm a musician and I'm so passionate about music. I go home and I'm thinking, okay, cool, I want to write a song.
Yeah.
Before I even write the song, I think of what the song is going to be about. So I write a song about breaking this girl's heart and blah, 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 blah. But actually, you know what, I really love her that much. So I got the idea of the song.
Yes.
What is that?
That's an idea. And there's no copyright in ideas.
Okay.
Copyright only vests once you write the song down. So there's 3 criteria for copyright.
Okay, so now I start writing the lyrics.
Yes,
okay,
correct.
I've written the lyrics, but there's no melody yet. I've just written the lyrics.
Fine.
Okay, what is that now?
So in the Copyright Act, there are different types of works. There's copyright in musical works. There's copyright in literary works, where the lyrics would fall. There's copyright in artistic works. So there's copyright in different types of works, which is why when you have a product like a song, you can have 5 different people making money from different aspects of the song.
Okay.
Lyrics, melody, whatever else the case may be, as long as you know who did what and you're able to pay them. So there's no copyright in idea. You can think of the most wonderful ideas possible. You need to reduce it to material form. So for copyright to vest, it must be original. It must be in material form, so you write it down, and it must be a work as listed in the Copyright Act. So like I said, literary work, musical work, etc., etc. There are different types of copyrights, which attract different types of, they call them a bundle of rights. So essentially, if you write a song, you can earn money from those rights. So let's just say in the music industry, you can earn money from performance rights. So if that song is performed in public, you can earn money from mechanical rights. So if it's played on a digital platform, you can earn money from different types of income streams depending on the rights that accrue to that work. I know it sounds complicated. So just think of a vase of flowers, if I can simplify it. Think of the vase as a song, and think of every single flower in there as a right that you can earn money from. But you just need to understand who, for instance, is administering that right. And for instance, if it's a SAMRO, you register with a SAMRO and you can earn money from a SAMRO. If it's a Capasso, for instance, you can earn money from a Capasso. If it's a SAMPRA or an IMPRA, you can earn money from SAMPRA or IMPRA. So you need to understand what you're doing, right? And so for every song, think of every song that you write as a vase of flowers. And in that vase of flowers, there are many flowers. And each one of those flowers can make you money.
Okay. So let's bring it even closer to home, right? Yeah. In the television industry now. Because it's quite a sensitive topic, right? Especially when it comes to young producers. What are the steps that producers should take once they have, let's say, conceptualized a show? But once again, like you said, right, IP or copyright vests once something is produced. But I still have an idea, all right? And I still have something that's written on paper. And before I submit this to MultiChoice or any other broadcaster, what are the steps that I should take to ensure that at least that idea is still being protected somehow? Or can it not be protected?
No, it can. And I know there are various stories, lots of stories where people submitted works and they were declined, whatever else the case may be. And then lo and behold, a couple of years later, you see the same thing or a similar concept.
I did it correct, yes.
Right. But you have reduced it in material form. I think a lot of people do watermark the things that they do, confirm that the work is copyrightable when you do send it. In some instances, you can actually sign things like NDAs so that you protect your work. So there are various ways you can do things, but it doesn't always guarantee that will be protected. But there are measures that you can utilize to try and limit the damage or mitigate the damage or mitigate the risk.
And look, the truth is, I mean, especially these days when it comes to the creative space, at least, they say that there isn't anything new under the sun.
Correct.
Right? In the sense that you and I can have actually very similar ideas.
Correct.
All right. But at the same time, and I guess I take your point in the sense that, you still have to try and watermark it, etc. But if I write something like copyright at the bottom of something, does that mean anything on paper?
It does mean something.
Okay.
It does mean something, but life is life. Doesn't stop someone from saying, like you're saying, there's nothing original. And unfortunately, with a case like that, is that you would then need to litigate, take it to court for copyright infringement, and then prove your case based on the facts of your case, and then leave it to a judge to determine who holds the copyright.
All right, so now let's talk about Partners Against Piracy, because I mean, this is quite a huge thing in terms of the impact that it has on the industry, right? I mean, artists, they produce works and they need to be compensated for it. But when people, miss or rather abuse their original works, then it limits the amount of, revenue or money that they can generate from that piece of work. What is PAP all about?
Sure. So Partners Against Piracy is a Pan-African initiative to deal with piracy. And people, what is piracy? I don't know how old you are, how young you are.
Listen, disclaimer, I am guilty of this, just by the way, but it's a story for another day.
There was a time where you'd see these adverts where, I don't know if it's the police or whichever authority would have like cassettes and whatnot piled up,
Yes,
piracy, back in the day when you were sharing cassettes, CDs, etc., etc. So it's easier to use, right? Yeah. Where, they're copying these CDs. So you've
trust me, I would say 90% of us, right, at this age group are very guilty of it.
So, but it's easy to see that because that was a physical thing. You had to pass things around. I don't know, like, I know when I was younger, when you listen to the top 20 or whatever on a Saturday, put your cassette in there. When the song plays, record. Stop just before the DJ, Correct. So there was a lot of that stuff happening where there was a creative output out there in the market, which was being copied, and the creators and whatever companies were behind them were not getting the money or the revenue for that. So that was an easy thing to imagine. Now you have this era where there's this digital consumption of content where you can copy something at a click of a button, where you can share, for instance, like a book on WhatsApp, and then it gets spread wildly, where people can go to websites and download things, where people can take their phone in a movie theater and record, the things like that. That's piracy. You're essentially stealing creative content and not paying for it. And it has caused such a problem worldwide. I mean, annually, it affects the entertainment industry. I think there's a loss of about $70 billion.
Goodness.
Right? In the States alone, there's like 70,000 job losses a year just in the AV sector. Illegal streaming is impacting between 50 to 75% of revenue in Nigeria and the film industry. So that's revenue loss.
Crazy.
So the numbers are quite high, and it's growing, it's staggering. And because of COVID, because we were stuck in our homes and all we could do is entertain ourselves, that's when people realized that the creative industry is important. The numbers spiked drastically, and it's become a problem. And for organizations like a MultiTalks and the broadcasters, it's really harming their revenue. That's where this was born from, to say, guys, we do need an initiative that looks at a multi-pronged strategy, looking at how to deal with piracy, because clearly there's a market. Consumers are consuming the stuff.
But and I understand that, right? I mean, look, like I said, and I'm serious about this one. I think at some point in life, we have been guilty of it.
Yes.
Right? But what I don't understand is that if you know that this is wrong, why then do people still do it?
They don't know it's wrong. They don't think they're doing anything wrong because they perceive it as a victimless crime. There is no victim at the end of the day. I'm just consuming entertainment. Why? Because that industry, they're just singing and dancing. What's the problem, right? So people don't think that far. They just want content to be free and it's accessible. And our instant gratification culture. You just want to get it and you don't think about the consequences and that there is a victim at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's there. And you use it. So, for instance, if you're looking for like free PowerPoint presentations, everybody does it.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Free template of contract. You go to
correct.
You're always trying to find something that's free so then you can use it for yourself to better yourself or to entertain yourself. And it's a big societal problem. And people don't understand that they are consequences. They are victims.
Yeah. Look, okay, so let's just take a step back, right? I just want to kind of like distinguish between the two, right? And I like the example that you used in terms of free template for this and free template for that. There's one where someone is doing something to benefit from it, like financially.
Correct.
Right? So there's the guy who is at home, he knows he's not going to watch Mzansi Magic when the show is live. But when it goes on catch up, there's a show that he likes and he wants to binge it with no ad breaks, sits there with his camera, records the whole thing, then puts it on his platform and then kind of, and feeds the larger community. And then that way generates, I don't even know if you can make money from that, but let's say that they are able to make money from it, right? So that's now someone who is hurting the multi-choice business in that sense, right? Then there's someone who says, I'm this 20-year-old and I want to know a bit more about copyright law as for a musician, right?
Yes.
So what's in these music contracts? And then they Google music contracts and free music contract for artists. So they're not selling it, right? But they want to equip themselves in a way to understand more about how to protect themselves.
Okay.
So now they're going to a platform. They don't want to pay for a contract or go to a law firm and say, please, can you guys give me advice on this? And then I'll pay for that service.
Okay, so I'll need to take it back. So remember, you have a product of your mind. It meets the requirements of the Copyright Act. Copyright now vests in this thing. Once copyright vests and you have those bundle of rights, you as a creator have the right to do certain things with it, publish it, license it, etc., make money from it. And part of those rights are economic rights, so that's making money from it, and moral rights, meaning somebody can't just take it and adapt it or whatever without your permission.
Okay.
So in order to use those rights, people need to ask for your permission to do so, and they need to, in some instances, pay you to do so.
Correct, yes.
And obviously there's a whole different variations of how that happens. And those rights versus with you, they're exclusive to you.
Correct.
As the creator of the content. So you can allow people to do certain things and and once they do that in whatever regime, they can then remunerate you and then you move on. There are exceptions to that where you don't have to pay for the use of those works.
Okay.
And what those are called are exceptions to copyright. So in every jurisdiction, you have the norm where you have these rights and people must pay you and ask for your permission, etc., etc. But there are exceptions, right? And in our jurisdictions, we call them fair dealing. And it's a fixed list of exceptions to copyright. And we all know what those are. And one of those is for obviously research purposes, news, etc., so that we all know when you can use content. So if you're somebody who's sitting there and recording and then trying to make money from it,
that's illegal.
That's infringement. It's clear infringement. It's piracy. You are required to ask for permission and pay, get the requisite licenses, and then do that if you want to make your money. And then it's all legal, right?
That's where licensing comes in.
It's all of that, and distribution, because you're now becoming a distributor. But in other instances, you can use the content. It's for research purposes, educational purposes, and that's what you're using it for. But even in those instances, sometimes, right? You need to have a regime where there's use for the content. And what we're advocating for is that you have what we call a private copy levy. Because in some instances, copies are still being made.
Correct.
In that private
And
use.
I can think of one example, right? Like lecturers, for instance. So if you I want to make an example of a scene from Shaba or whatever.
Yeah.
So you record that scene. Now you go to your class and this becomes part of your study guide.
Yeah.
There, I think you would need to find some special permissions, or if not, have to pay for that, right? Because it's going to get distributed somehow.
Yeah. So educational institutions are required to also take up licenses.
Hey, man, I should have become a lawyer.
You must have a license, because if that, there are different types of work. So there's the book, there's the video, so there are different types of work. So they must be, and that's why we say, come and take up a license, not just with SAMRO, but the other organizations, so that when you use the works for whatever purposes in your environment, you are covered. You are indemnified for the use of the work.
All right, so now let's go back to the work that you guys are doing at PUP, right? So what are some of the advancements and the inroads that you have made, right, on the continent in terms of trying to educate people around this? And have you seen a change?
So it's slow because, like I said, there's a market for it. And one of the biggest issues that we found is just the lack of awareness. And that's why this thing is so rampant. So there has been, obviously, there are different PAP initiatives in different jurisdictions. There's South Africa, there's Botswana, there's Nigeria, there's Kenya, because you have to have different initiatives in every different jurisdiction, because there are nuances and things that happen in those countries that you need to take into account. But from a South African perspective, obviously there's the awareness component, there's a legal component which you need to take into account of, and there's also the enforcement component, amongst other things.
Yeah.
From a legal component in South Africa, there's a huge fight to make sure that we've got a copyright act that's fit for purpose. There's been a lot of lobbying through my organization, the Copyright Coalition of South Africa in particular, to have copyright legislation that's fit for purpose. That is currently before the Constitutional Court, so we're waiting to hear what happens with that. From an enforcement perspective, there's been partnerships with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, because one of the areas where there is a problem is that, yes, there's an infringement. Yes, the law says you can prosecute, but the cops don't think this is a crime. They don't understand it. They don't have time for it. They're busy with murders and whatnot.
Yeah, like you say, and this for me is where it becomes a bit murky, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, even currently now, our prisons are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right, with the number of inmates that they have, and so what punitive measures can be taken against people, right? Because I'm one to say, yes, it's a crime. They need to get punished for it. But then at the same time, I'm like, someone who has distributed a song to millions of people, yes, financially we can see the impact, versus someone who just killed someone, right? And that person needs to go to jail. What if we can't send someone who has committed a crime of like piracy, what would you recommend then should be the punitive measures that are taken against those individuals, understanding?
Take them to court. And that's expensive, unfortunately. That's so you have your civil remedies and you've got your criminal remedies. And South Africa is not a very litigious country. It's not like the States where you can see with all these TV shows, everyone's going to court for something.
Yeah, people won't mention the names of the shows, but yeah.
It's expensive. I mean, consultation with a lawyer. What you're looking at about 1,000 upwards per hour.
Yeah.
That's just a consultation, and there's perusal, etc., etc. You need to brief counsel. You need to get experts. There's just a whole. It's just expensive, and the average creator cannot afford it. Which is why you have organizations like ours, which represent creators, who then have to litigate on their behalf. But that also costs money. And it takes a lot of time, that in my experience. So it's a costly exercise. So we need to keep pushing on that front. We need to keep pushing awareness so that the behavior stops, because a lot of it is it's a behavioral problem. We need to continue with pushing for the education of the state. Like I said, cops need to be educated. Magistrates need to be educated about the crime. Yes, it's not a priority for you, but it is a crime. And the losses are significant. So on that end as well, we need various stakeholders, policymakers, legislators to understand that the culture and creative industries is not a hobby. It contributes 3% to the GDP. It's on par with agriculture. Take us seriously. And because of what we have and don't have in place, you are allowing South Africa in particular to be a crime scene for the culture and creative industries. And you are allowing a situation where ultimately there won't be creative output in this country, and we'll be importing books, we'll be buying songs overseas, we'll just be consuming content that's not created here because there's no enabling environment in this country to do so. People can't make money. So if you can't make money in that craft, you go and do what the traditional, you can become a lawyer, doctor, whatever, if you can, So we need to keep pushing a multi-pronged strategy to deal with digital content piracy, so that we have consumers behaving appropriately. We are dealing with the perpetrators appropriately. We have the right legislative and policy frameworks in place, and we have the right partnerships in place. So there's a lot that needs to be done. But I think we just need a shifting of mindset as to how the culture and creative industries are looked at.
But now, with these current challenges, and I'll go back to our earlier conversation around how entertainment is everywhere, right? Entertainment is these year-end parties that are going to happen soon. There's, so much happening in corporate. What is corporate's role in this whole thing? What can they do to influence?
I think corporate, firstly, and I think a lot of them do, they comply. They have to. They've got risk registers and all these other things. They don't want to see themselves being sued.
Yeah,
because that the reputational damage. So they will generally comply. But I think corporates themselves also need to understand the value of what they are using, because it's entertainment. As you know, artist is coming to sing a song. So, for instance, they won't view it as a facilitator coming to facilitate. For instance, like a board meeting or a strategic session, right? They won't see it as that. They'll be like, okay, marketing or whatever budget they put it there, you need this thing, okay, fine, whatever else the case may be. So I think there needs to be an appreciation of the value to the economy and to the creatives themselves. I think that's lacking, and I think that's where I think a lot of organizations, maybe like a SAMRO, need to do a lot more work around creating awareness for our users as to what the value of what they're using is. Because I think once corporate understands value, they're then able to speak a lot more about it, have initiatives around it. Like, for instance, now a MultiChoice understands the value of its content, because that's its business, it's content.
Yeah,
and
IP is
it's a big thing. And the danger to IP. So what you do, you put initiatives in place within the structure to educate your staff and your other stakeholders as to what the value is. So I think a lot more partnerships, a lot more corporates outside the culture and creative industry space, so that they can also educate their staff in particular about these things, because that's a captive audience. I know it at my work. I get pop-ups every week. I must go into some video about some other thing that I must learn about.
Look, Chola, we could have this conversation the whole day, but unfortunately all good things do come to an end. But however, before we leave, let's just think about that young Chola, right, who had all these dreams and aspirations of becoming a lawyer one day, and they're probably watching right now. What's your advice to them?
I would say to the young me, you're on the right path. Life is going to take its twists and turns, but you will be fine. And no matter what happens, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and everything that happens to you will help shape who you will become. And don't have any regrets.
I love that. Chola, it's been great. It's been an honor. You guys are doing an amazing job. Please keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.